Ready, go!
Cameras first came to Francis Coombs School in 1961, when, as Watford's young and progressive secondary modern, it was the subject of a documentary, Our School. Now it's a small comprehensive, struggling to survive against tough local opposition. To compete in this educational game, everything that can be easily measured must be measured, so that schools can be compared. It makes the optimism of the early days seem almost romantically naive.
There are parents and teachers, all too ready to label the young as flippant, lazy, rude, selfish, and more. Perhaps too many of us have forgotten what it feels like to grow up. To be a young person, and stranded somewhere between the child and the adult world.
But in a much more competitive environment, teachers here still ask whether something important isn't in danger of being lost. Under the leadership of head teacher Christopher Hall, the school has maintained for many years a profoundly liberal philosophy.
Children don't want to be exposed to ridicule or failure. And therefore the philosophy we had identified the two problems in schools really as fear and envy. I think things which run through society far too much. And if you could take away the envy and if you could take away the fear, then you could build on success.
We've got to be able to trust each other in order to work together. Right, we're going to do a few exercises which try to build up our trust in each other. And what I'm going to ask Martin to do, I'm going to ask him just to rock back, fall back, without going like that, without stepping a foot back to kind of catch himself, because I will stop him from falling. Just let him concentrate. Fall
There's
back.
that marvellous line from Pooh, Winnie the Pooh, who said, people talk to animals, but they never listen. And we thought perhaps if you listen to children and give children a chance to say what they want and what they need, then you can guide them the way that you want.
Forget your children. Put yourself in the role of a parent. What rights do you think you should have as a parent? Do you think you should have a right to say what time you'd expect your son or daughter to come in from being out? What about you, John? You're a dad. You've got a 14-year-old son. What time do you think he should come in? Royce, Richard? What time do you think?
9 and 10.
9 and 10.
I don't think that it's necessarily important to say A is cleverer than B. What you do is that you say B is now cleverer than he was. And one can rejoice in children who have learned to do things which other children would find very simple.
Close your eyes and remember a place. Think and concentrate and remember a place. No, you're not going to go to sleep, Stephen. You're just going to remember a place. You're all poets today. On National Poetry Day, you can go home and say, today I was a poet. Yeah? If you can be a poet on one day, you can be a poet every day of your life.
But in the 1990s, parents have been encouraged to compare schools on the basis of their exam results. And judged on that basis alone, Francis Coombs' intake began to drop. Christopher Hall faced a simple choice.
There were lots of reasons why I resigned, and many of them selfish. It's a very hard job, very tiring job. I'm growing old. But in fairness to the school, I felt that I wasn't the kind of head that the school needed to look into the future.
I was very shocked because I came to the school because I knew him and I felt quite stunned. You don't expect it. You don't expect somebody who's got such charisma and such ability and he's so good with kids and seems to be thriving on his job to suddenly say that they're not going to do it anymore. They feel that they want to retire. So I went away with lots of teachers and we just, hey, what can you say? We didn't know what to say. And I think we all wanted to respond and we all wanted to go and say something to him, and teachers did. You know, people went to him and said, you know, you can't do this, don't do it. But he made up his mind and that is all credit to him. He decided and he knew what he needed to do.
I wasn't capable of changing into the kind of head that we now have. And in fairness to everybody, and with some sense of honour, I thought it was best to go.
Let's imagine that your son came in, you'd said, I want you in between 9 and 10, all right, and no later. He comes in at 11:30.
First and foremost, Chris Hall was a teacher. He was a teacher first, he was a teacher second, he was a teacher through and through. And when he was a headmaster, he was still teaching. That was absolutely the essential element in everything he did, whether it be fronting an assembly, whether it be stomping the corridors, whatever. He was a teacher. Now, a headmaster has to be an administrator, an accountant, a raiser of funds, a wheeler and dealer of finance, has to raise sponsorship money. In other words, a headmaster now, or a head teacher now, has to be a managing director. And if Chris Hall had gone on, he would have had to become the managing director of Francis Coombe PLC. And that would have been anathema to him.
And so Christopher Hall has been replaced.
When I introduced myself to the staff, I stood up in front of them and said, I am Sylvia Moore, I am now the Chief Executive of Francis Coombe School PLC. That's my job. I run Francis Coombe as a going concern. I have a budget, I've got to balance the budget. To be a leader of a school and to actually move that school forward, you've got to have it. Now, don't ask me to define it, I don't know, but I can see it in other people, and obviously people saw it in me.
I think I'd rather have a nut tree stuck on the face.
As an outsider at that time coming into the school, it was very obvious within seconds of walking into the door. I personally felt there are things missing. There's no point in us sitting here with our extremely high moral principles in total isolation with no children coming through the door. I mean, that's absolutely useless. We have to get the children in the school and the families and work with them. And if I have to play games to get people to come into the school and consider us, then I will play those games. But that's part of my role.
Francis Coombe School takes a step closer to closure every time a parent is lured away by better exam results elsewhere, or by a school that simply looks smarter. So, Sylvia Moore has immediately set about changing the school's comfortable, down-at-heel image.
We've got a new head teacher, but she's a woman, and she's just more pink. She's put all pink. And you can tell by the chairs. Yeah.
It's not pink, it's new female head teacher colour. There's only so much that you can do. I mean, you must bear in mind that those youngsters, some of them have been here 7 years, and it's very hard for them because all of a sudden in comes this new person with pink walls. And yes, I can understand them feeling some resentment towards that.
She's saying to everyone, we're a whole family, we're a big school. Yeah, she doesn't look at it like that. It's her school. Like, that's why she's got the carpets, the chairs. It's her school. It's the way she looks at it. It's got nothing to do with the pupils, because she don't ask opinion. It's just what she wants, she has to do. It's got nothing to do with us. It's not our school anymore. It's like her school, it's not ours.
What on earth is going on in here? Right, what do you reckon to the new changed arrangements that we've got for the tuck shop and what have you?
I prefer it better down the bottom bit where it's now.
Yeah, and I bet I know why, but it's because it's 10 steps nearer.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put her down, but she's trying to change things from, like, Mr. Hall. And his idea of selling a school is let the pupils get on with it, not carpets and chairs and plants. It's the pupils that sell the school, not furniture.
Don't throw it!
We have to pay for our books and stuff now because she's spent money on the carpet, which we don't need, which she could have spent money on books instead, which is more important for our education. Yeah.
Don't need carpets.
I mean, the lowest school have to pay 50p a book, 50p for a book, which we never used to have to pay for until she came.
Yeah. We just sort of like money. That's all we are to her. The more people she gets, the more money she gets, and that's what she cares about. She doesn't care about how we feel in school.
There's all the league tables and which is your best school, even the good state school guide you get in the newspapers, and it doesn't really matter. Every school should be given the same amount of money, treated the same. It's not It's not a race, it's just a way to educate the young. It's not a business.
Officially open the dining room.
TV personality Zoe Ball has been persuaded to launch one of Sylvia Moore's initiatives, bringing local business in to brighten the school up. The tables and chairs have been sponsored by a fast food furniture company, and the drinks machine is on loan from its manufacturers. With any luck, there'll even be a picture in the Watford Press. Under its new head, the school aims to be an expanding business in a contracting market. But it'll need more than a new image.
If we are going to start thinking in commercial terms, we have to start thinking of a customer or a client. And that means that pupils suddenly become units of production as opposed to living, breathing beings. And we have to then consider who is the customer. Now, the customer isn't the pupil, it's the parent. And the parent will then say, right, I'm paying for a product, I want to see results. And seeing results means that they'll run their finger down the league tables and they'll see which school's got the highest percentage A to C grades and probably won't look further than that. And suddenly everything you've built up is beginning to fall apart.
You come and have your lunch with us.
I've just eaten some, sir.
We'll go and sit with Mr. Dobson, nowhere near Jeffrey College. You know this man, he's a your year head. Say hello.
As I spent my first day going around the school, I picked up that in certain aspects the school was super. Pastoral care, knowing the children and so on, all those things that you've grown to know. But it became very evident very quickly, and I suspected this before I arrived with all the documentation that came, that there was little focus on academic rigour, little focus on pushing each child to actually achieve the best that they could in terms of academic results. And I felt, and I actually commented on this to the people that I spoke to during the first interview day, about the need for getting the balance right.
That is excellent. Shall I mark it for you?
Yeah.
So can I keep it? Yeah. And then I'll do it for you afterwards, okay?
Some of the senior teachers still believe that, on balance, academic rigour is only for the few. In their view, most children require something a good deal less measurable, but a lot more complex.
Everyone can teach bright children. It's easy. It's really, really easy to teach bright children. It is not so easy to teach children who need special help, who've got difficult home circumstances. And that's why this nonsense of league tables is so appalling.
When you get the results, does she shout them out so everybody knows you're getting on?
She goes around asking you what they are.
And you have to tell them?
Yeah, you have to tell them.
And she doesn't sort of miss you out? You have to say, I haven't got any?
Yeah,
and
you
how,
say like it in French.
And how do you feel when you have to do that, darling?
I don't like it.
You don't like it? Well, I'll have a word with Mrs Hopkins then and we'll see if we can do something different, OK?
The influence of the marketplace is catastrophic for this school because parents, obviously, they see school's performance in terms of its exam results, and I would say basically that is it. If they are deciding for their 9-10-year-old child, they want to know whether their child is going to get 8 GCSEs, grade A, B and C. And they look... Because that isn't what being a child is all about, and growing up in a society isn't all about what exam results you come out with. For how many children is getting 8 A's, B's and C's at GCSE an appropriate ambition? It certainly isn't. So for parents just to judge a school on that, it must be wrong.
Ever since the early 1960s, comprehensive schools were supposed to provide a varied education to a variety of children.
The school did have a real talent for spotting what it was special in every child and making them grow and develop. Not necessarily always along academic lines, but just for sort of releasing that energy within every child. I'm not saying it won't continue to happen, but I think the focus has shifted so that we're very concerned with money, we're very concerned with marketing forces. Is that the way you run a great public service?
Most state schools have struggled financially, organising spring fairs to buy extra equipment. Though now the money goes just as much to buy books and to keep the roof on. But this isn't just about cash. A major plank of Sylvia Moore's campaign is to build up the school's relationship with the community, with the customers of the future.
To be ahead in the 21st century, you have to be more than a charismatic person. You have to have other strings to your bow and other skills under your belt. I also think you have to have tremendous amount of energy.
And it seems another thing expected of a modern head teacher is volunteering to make a fool of yourself in public.
You've got to have energy. You've got to be able to withstand everything that comes through that door, day in, day out, incessantly. Whether it's naughty children, whether it's parents needing support, whether it's the LEA, whether it's from the government. It can come from any direction.
I'm head of special needs.
In this case, parents have come to complain about what one of the teachers has said to their daughter.
You had a conversation on the telephone, but you've not actually met?
No.
Right,
No.
okay. Exactly what did Mandy say to you happened? That Mrs. Broadhead said that she was a sad child.
Mandy would not apologise to Sarah, and she was adamant.
I didn't ask her to apologise. And we had a general discussion about how physical violence in schools and other places can degenerate into mayhem. And I think if it was your child who'd been physically
Why can you
hurt-
say she wasn't hurt just because it wasn't physical hurt?
What is it you want from me? Do you want me to say, yes, I'm quite happy that Mandy can now go out, and when she's unhappy or has a row with someone, she can hit her in the face again?
No.
But that's what Mandy said she would do.
So
Mandy
how-
actually said she
That
would
isn't
do that.
what I'm getting at.
I'm
So how
sorry,
do we
Mandy
handle
said she would
that?
do it. How
Yes,
do
I
we
know,
cope
she
with
told me
that?
expecting an apology.
Hold on. Shouldn't, if a child needs counselling, shouldn't you see the parents first? And not discuss it with the child?
If you want me to take it further, I am more than happy to open up and do a full investigation into the situations, but then I take it over and I move it forward the way that I feel is appropriate.
So,
I was one of those obnoxious little children that used to sit all her dolls and teddies in a little circle, do sums on separate pieces of paper, write them all out, give them a test, collect them all in and mark them. So, wanting to be a teacher, it never crossed my mind to be anything else.
But teaching doesn't only mean dealing with children. The government have decided to enforce an old law requiring an act of worship in schools every day. Local Christians have come to meet the staff, and Sylvia has to chair the discussion.
So we're looking at our assemblies. They are, I believe, they're quality assemblies that we deliver now, and we need to try and find, if you feel that you can do so, find ways in which this act of worship can be brought into our assemblies. Now, I'm not prepared to be any stronger than that, because I'm very well aware of a number of people's feelings around the room, and if I insisted on a religious assembly, I don't know whether I'd be in isolation or whether there'd be nobody there.
Our assemblies generally have had a theme, whether it be a moral theme, whether it be a sort of human theme. If we didn't comply before, how are we going to comply in the future?
I don't think we are going to be able to comply with the letter of the law at this stage, because we haven't got enough people who are prepared and willing to actually take a collective act of worship, to actually lead a collective act of worship.
But they've got...
Meanwhile, the PE staff discover that someone has broken into their stores. It's a case for the Watford CID.
30 or 40 left over from last year. And they've taken 2 brand new Rounders bats out of that other cupboard. So what they're going to do with them, God only knows. But they haven't taken much out of that girls' changing room. And they've taken a lovely knife from there. This is one of my quiz night raffle prizes that they've obviously been through that cupboard. I can't touch it yet, so I don't know.
While the police begin to narrow their hunt, The Christians are still pursuing the reluctant members of staff.
We don't want religious overkill, and we're not trying to say that we want that every morning. But I think we want the silence, and we want the times where we can say, let's bring a time where we can just think about school, and we want times as well where we can reflect on Christian ethos. And I think once we begin to do that, then their actual feelings about God and about life, I think, become a lot stronger, and I think that will help generally throughout their life.
No, I couldn't make myself do that. If I was to stand out in front of a school and I'd have to talk from my heart, as it were, and I couldn't do that. And one of the reasons I couldn't do it is I don't think it would work as an assembly. Children are incredibly sensitive to how sincere you are when you're speaking, and they would work that out within seconds that I was delivering a message that I'd been told to deliver, and I wouldn't do it. What I would like to ask...
They've taken brand new hockey balls from these boxes that have been thrown in there. Right. Again, not the plastic ones like they've left down there.
As the scene of crime investigation continues, the school's intelligence is coming up with its own list of suspects' names.
Officers being responsible. We've got 5 different people who've done it.
Right. Well, I can add to your list because we've obviously had our moles feelers out in school, and we've got 3 names that have been given to us.
Oh.
Right. Right. That's one that's come from quite a reliable source. In fact, a very reliable source. A second boy who is not a member of this school, and a third name who's also not a member of this school, although his sister is, attached to the school. She doesn't actually attend the school, but she is attached, and that's
I mean, these are it's like the same in Casablanca, round up the usual suspects.
Right, that's right. Right.
Suspects, you see. Every time something happens in this area, doesn't matter what it is, and we've discovered in the past even outsiders coming in doing things, when the actual offence is discovered, the usual suspects are named.
The police have not charged anybody with the crime, and school assemblies go on much as before. Getting Francis Coombe to rethink its priorities and to compete successfully for Watford's children is turning into a long game for the new head teacher.
There are 1 or 2 members of staff who are still not sure about my motives. I mean, a comment I overheard in the staff room recently, I wonder what she really thinks. It indicates to me that I've got still a way to go with convincing staff that the vision that there is for Francis Coombe is one that we can all move towards.
Head of department or a curriculum area manager or a head of year, then collecting information to inform your appraisal.
Formal industrial-style appraisal methods have to be introduced in schools because the government insists on it.
The next most important feature is the actual appraisal interview itself.
But some Francis Coombe teachers feel that in their present form, methods of appraisal beg the central question of what this school is for.
I don't like the language because language is a very powerful tool. Once you use words like clients and customers for children, once you start calling teachers facilitators, I don't facilitate, I teach. I don't like the word management facilities. I don't like any of those words because it alters the culture of the whole process.
Every system has a method of saying, that if you're no good, I'm afraid you're on your way. We're the only ones who turn around and sort of say, well, we'll keep them, and at the end of it,
everybody's happy. Well, in that case, we should stamp on it.
We shouldn't stamp on it. We should get rid of rubbishy teachers.
But who is going to make the decision on who's going to get rid of rubbish? Come on, you going to be God? You say you're rubbish, because their face doesn't fit?
Oh, come on. Anyone knows who's a good teacher and who's a bad teacher. You don't need all this to tell you.
I actually think at some point something's going to crack and people are going to say there is no way we can handle this anymore, having to produce masses of paperwork which just gets filed away. We offer a very rounded education with well thought out ideas behind it, but parents don't send their children to Francis Coombe School. If something doesn't change, then schools like Francis Coombe just won't go down the pan, but will struggle. We'll never improve our kind of intake so that we can compete if you need to compete, maybe we don't even need to compete. Maybe we should just be happy with what we've got and say this is what we're good at and this is what we do, and we're happy with that.
But collaboration or closure isn't much of a choice for the teachers.
It is important not to tolerate appeasement, but at the same time there has to be an awareness of the way of the world, to the extent that the pressures are on every school, and that's where the rub is, if you like, because those pressures are increasingly forcing head teachers all over the country to cope with demands which are unsuited to the whole process of education.
No. There's Rob Aitley. It's Colin Butcher, look, see?
Yeah, Colin Butcher, Rob Aitley, Dave.
Francis Coombs School has had its distinguished moments, but on its 40th birthday it faces an uncertain future. Its new head is convinced that it can only survive by smartening up and competing aggressively for academic results.
That's Linda Rumbold, who died. Pete Merriweather, it started in October 1961, is when it started.
The new head teacher believes that the future depends on accepting the reality of the educational marketplace and not dwelling upon the nostalgic joys of the past.
If one or two members of staff think that I am driven by market forces, then only in time can I actually get across. And by working with the staff and by actually showing them tangibly that there aren't a lot of things that have been lost. In fact, we've lost nothing. If there are a number of staff who are still feeling that, then there's nothing I can actually do for those except say, let me get on with the job.
The school will succeed best when, together with the home, it sets out to interpret each child for what he is and what he can become. When each day, each moment is valued as a precious part of life and is not allowed to be thrown away or treated with indifference.
I have tremendous confidence in this school, absolutely. What goes on here is wonderful, but I can't affect the community, I can't affect parents unless I get them to come in and see it and experience it. So I don't kowtow to market forces. I do take account of them. Otherwise, we're a school that has no pupils and we will be a school that's dead. And there's no way we're going to be that.